politics.
So Red Alert 3, the Soviets find themselves at the brink of defeat at the hands of the Allies yet again. You know, the same thing that's been happening at the end of every Red Alert game. But this time they have a secret trick up their sleeve. They have one of their own time machines, and they decide to go back in time and take out the one person responsible for their constant defeat at the hand of the Allies, and that's none other than Mr. Albert Einstein himself. So they go back in time, they take out Einstein, they come back to the present to expect that Moscow has been restored, and indeed it has, and the Allies are nowhere to be found, at least initially. Come to find out that even though they went back in time successfully, the present has changed, but not the way they liked it. Or not the way they were expecting it to, anyway. They've spawned a new enemy on the stage, which we call the Empire of the Rising Sun, which is the Empire of Japan, and the Allies, while weakened, they haven't gone anywhere. So now instead of having one enemy, they have two, so they've made the situation a lot worse for themselves than had they not traveled back in time at all.
Can you tell us anything about the new faction, the Empire of the Rising Sun?
I can't give you too many details, but of course they're Japanese, so you'd expect a lot of Japanese popular culture to be to sneak their way into the faction. So there'll be a lot of transforming units. There'll be a lot of anime influence. There'll be a lot of influence from Japanese soldiers during World War II. And they're a very, very fun faction to play with. They're probably a little bit harder to play with given their transformable nature than either the Allies or the Soviets, but we think players will really latch onto a lot of the Japanese units. The resource system we're trying to keep a lot simpler than in previous games. There'll be one primary resource in Red Alert 3. The way that you mine it is pretty simple. We give you, when you go to build a resource structure down, like a refinery, we give you a little preview of where the most ideal place for that structure is. And when you place it down, it spawns a harvester all on its own. You don't have to build one manually. And then the most efficient method is one harvester per resource node. Resources aren't strewn about the field. They're localized in very centralized, or they're located in very centralized areas that we call resource nodes. And there's a variable number of nodes per map. And if you place a refinery in front of each node, that is pretty much your economy model right there, taking care of itself for you. We find that players want to focus on the combat and the exploration, and not so much the resource model. So Red Alert 3 straddles the line very neatly between letting people do that and still giving players a chance to harass their opponent's economy and not dumbing it down too much.
Low power.
The entire game, the entire Red Alert 3 campaign is co-op. So even if you don't have any friends like me, you can play the game, or you'll have to play the game with an AI co-commander. And each faction has up to 3 co-commanders that they can choose from. And each commander, of course, has their own strengths and weaknesses and prefers different kind of units and structures. And the commanders that you fight with in one campaign, that are your buddies, they'll end up being your mortal enemies when you switch campaigns later on. So it's kind of like a fighting game in that sense, where Guile is your buddy in one map, and he's your guy that you're fighting against in another. As you're playing the campaign, if at any point your friend comes online and you're sick of playing with a AI commander, you can very easily just drop in your buddy in the next mission. He'll take over the role of that co-commander, and you can play the entire game that way.
Red Alert 3 is a game where we're trying to finally do Navy right. And a lot of RTS games have done Navy. Even some of the earlier Red Alert games had pretty robust Navy, but it still felt a little bit ancillary to the gameplay, which was focused mostly on land. With Red Alert 3, we're allowing you to build your base on the water. There are resources on the water, out in the oceans. So really, to play Red Alert 3 well, you have to be a master of the ocean as well as the land. There are a lot of amphibious units, a lot of ships, and you put it all together and you get a whole new depth of strategy.
The differences between Red Alert games and CNC games are pretty vast, and especially between this one, RE3, and our last game, Command & Conquer 3. Just looking at the fiction and the tone, Red Alert 3 is much more lively, it's much more silly. We've got time travel and bears and units that shoot out of cannons and parachute down onto enemies. Whereas Command and Conquer, at least the Tiberium universe, is kind of serious. You've got Nod, which is this religious organization, and you've got this resource Tiberium that's infesting the world and kind of making it a very nasty place to be. And even the units themselves, the unit designs are lean much heavily towards sci-fi and serious sci-fi than Red Alert. So Red Alert is bright, colorful game, very fun. Tiberium, not so much on the bright and colorful. Still fun, but kind of dark and brooding.
Have you gotten the chance to get yourself a favorite unit in the new game yet?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My favorite unit has always been the Bullfrog, the Soviet Bullfrog, which you saw in the demo. It's very reminiscent of the Soviet flak track from Red Alert 2. But it has this big circus cannon on the back that can shoot any infantry that you have garrisoned in it, like bears, like Tesla troopers. So it's very silly, and it's really true to what Red Alert is all about. So yeah, Bullfrog is by far my favorite unit so far.